Everybody, welcome back to Final Resonance TV and episode number 59 of Van Halen Stories. Today I have an awesome guest for you all the way from Los Angeles, California. From TSO, once in Journey for a little while, Sons of Apollo, and I knew you first from Marching Out, Yngwie Malmsteen's album, of course. That's where I first heard your voice. I was a teenager, and we were listening.
So was
I. We were listening to that record. How old were you in that?
I was 18 when I joined him. It was
okay. Wow.
I met him in, I'm going to say August, maybe late July, I don't remember, of 1984. And by August, I was officially in the band. It took about 3 weeks before I got the finalization. And then obviously there was a final decision, last minute decision to get me on the first album, because Yngwie was supposed to sing those two songs on the first album, which to me, but for the life of me, I don't know how he would have gotten those higher notes, in the song As Above, So Below. He would have probably sung it an octave lower or altered the melody so they were a little higher, but not as high as I took it on the choruses. But yeah, it was a last minute decision, and that's why I got to sing on those first two songs before my 19th birthday.
That's wild. So you're just a little bit older than me. I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, you grew up with Van Halen the same way I did. Jeff Scott Soto, of course, is with us today.
Why couldn't it be episode 51 or episode 50? We could have had some kind of theme here. Right. 59. I'm struggling to find a correlation with Van Halen
for a link, right? Well, your connection to it is the same as mine, because we're right there in that time frame when it's when it's hitting hard. I saw 84 myself. You might have seen the concerts before me. Did you see stuff before 84, or did you see anything?
The only time I saw Van Halen live was Fair Warning tour.
Oh yeah, well there you go.
For some reason, I'm thinking it was actually Diver Down, but I'm pretty sure it was Fair Warning. And the second time I would have had the chance to see them, actually no, the first time I would have had the chance to see them was the California World Music Festival in '79.
Right.
And I believe that was one of their first real debut shows in LA as the Mighty Van Halen. I think it was just after the first album was out. And they were on the bill. Toto, I remember, played both nights. And I was a massive Toto fan before I wasn't even a Van Halen fan yet.
Yeah, right.
And I remember it was my buddy who was the massive rock fan, and I said, I don't care which day we go, I just want to see Toto. They're playing both days, so you can choose which one. And he decided he wanted to go to the Ted Nugent Cheap Trick night because he loved Ted more than he loved Van Halen. Ted obviously was out for a while, so he knew more of his material. Van Halen just come out, and now I kick myself. I wish we'd chosen the second night, because I would have seen Van Halen and Aerosmith the same time as seeing Toto.
Yeah, one of the historical things behind that is that Ed painted that guitar red right at that moment, right? Like that week before. I found out from some people that actually saw him painted in his backyard that week.
That's awesome.
And the thing about it was they had a Grand Prix going on, I think, at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And Ed was concerned about sales, and he was also having, the whole thing where he didn't want people to copy him, and that's why he did the red paint.
Oh, right? I get you.
Right. So it was all, and then what crazy other story was that when they did do that show and Mom and Dad went, somebody broke into their house and stole all their gold and platinum records.
Wow. My God.
That weekend, the same weekend. So it's got all kinds of stuff. They got all that replaced, of course, but it was.
Well, that was one of the great things about Ed. He wasn't just the great guitar player that he was. I mean, any diehard or Van Halen or Ed diehard would know that he was technically advanced in terms of tweaking his own guitars, reworking, rewiring, finding new ways to get certain sounds. I mean, obviously he was chasing that tone. He knew what he wanted out of his head. So he was constantly doing things, soldering and removing and replacing things all the time to get that sound that we all know so well. And that's aside of the fact that they say all the time, a guitar player's sound comes from the fingers. Of course, we know Ed can pick up any guitar through any rig and make it sound like Ed. But obviously the tone was something he was chasing, as well as the fact that he was going to make that sound on the way he played and the way his fingers touch those strings.
Yeah, he was always experimenting, right? He was always looking for, and not just guitar. His guitar, he was always messing with just about everything around his house.
Yeah,
like he was just a tinkerer, like they always said. So when you go back with Van Halen, what's the first time you hear them?
Clearly, in the beginning stages of Eruption and You Really Got Me. And it's funny, back in the day, I always thought Eruption should have come before you. Ain't Talking About Love, because it ends in A, the same as, or A flat, because they tuned down a half step.
Yeah.
Eruption basically ends in A, and that's why it naturally goes into You Really Got Me, da 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 da, or A flat.
Right.
I'll keep it standard tuning for the sake of conversation, but everybody knows it was tuned down a half step, so it was A flat. But also Ain't Talking About Love is also in A minor.
Right.
So
A minor.
when I made my own cassette version of it from the album, I actually put Eruption before Ain't Talking About Love, strangely enough. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah. Well, I loved, when I heard Ain't Talking About Love, it just had such a unique sound, the way that he had tacked with the pick.
Yeah.
That metallic-y kind of thing that he had, the muted thing. And that was like, part of it was his hands, and part of it was the pick technique, between the alternate picking and then also legato and every kind of little variation that he did.
Absolutely.
With that. Yeah, it was crazy the way he did that. So that you said about 78, you heard them?
Just when that first dropped, pretty much. And again, I didn't really soak it in. I wasn't really a fan, probably until, I'm going to say it wasn't even until Fair Warning, strangely enough. Of course, I was very aware of the first 3 albums. I loved Dance the Night Away because I was a pop guy. I love this. Going back to what I said about Toto, I was mostly an R&B soul guy growing up. I hated rock. I hated the overtones, the undertones of rock sounded too. It sounded like noise in my ears as I was a kid. I didn't listen to anything distorted, anything with shredding guitar. It wasn't my world at that time. I loved Earth, Wind and Fire, the Bee Gees, Little River Band. I was into a softer pop, more polished, radio-friendly sound. So when Van Halen came along, they were lumped in with the Aerosmiths and the Ted Nugents and Cheap Tricks, who I was not a fan of at the time. It really took me a minute to get into that stuff, and it was because of Toto having Bobby Kimball, or Journey having Steve Perry, or Foreigner having Lou Gramm. They had these soulful singers that sold it to me, in the sense that you can marry the two. You can marry rock with R&B and soul, and that was my kind of introduction into getting into rock music. And then, of course, it started seeping in. The Queen end of things, the way they were experimenting, doing so many different sounds. And then, of course, Van Halen. You have everything from Dance the Night Away to Little Dreamer. There were different things that showed that this band wasn't just a shredding, over-the-top party band.
Yeah.
And so by the time Fair Warning came around, I was an absolute fan, and that's my favorite Van Halen album to this day still.
Fair Warning. Okay. Cool. What's your favorite song off that? Any particular?
It's hard to say, because it's the obvious would be Unchained or So This Is Love.
Right.
But I guess Mean Streets, just because it has such a cool groove. It was slinky, it was greasy, it had fire and groove, but it also had a sexiness about it. And by then I was kind of coming into my own place as an artist, as me trying to be a performer and an artist and everything. So that really resonated to me for some reason at the time. But Dirty Movies, the album is just so great. Well, Roth was another reason, and no disrespect, because obviously I grew to not only love the man, I love what he did for the band. But back then, I came from the side of listening to great singers like Bobby Kimball, Steve Perry, Freddie Mercury, that type of thing. So Roth to me was more of a character singer, and to me it wasn't that great of a singer. So it diminished the experience for me back then in listening to Van Halen. His voice was one of the reasons I didn't like Van Halen. Okay, and it shifted later as to his voice is one of the reasons I do love Van Halen. It's kind of crazy how that. Yeah, I did a total 180 on that. Yeah, there were a lot of bands that I loved at the time, and then as I got older, I did the 180 and go, oh, they're not. I'm not getting what I got as a kid, as a teenager from them now. Whereas Roth's voice and everything he did back then has matured to the point where I equate him as one of the greats. It's so strange how that works out. But people used to say it all the time. He's not the best singer. Live he's dropping melodies, he's dropping lyrics, and all that kind of stuff bothered me, because I was always into the guys that kept it more pro and kind of kept more true to form, more true to the album versions, etc. Sure. So it took me a minute to kind of separate the two. Studio is one thing, going live is another thing. You do what you do live for the experience of the actual show. You do what you do in the studio for the experience of what you get in the songs.
Like you said, character his lyrical, content is really interesting. Some of the little drop ins where he would, come up with the little phrases with just talking phrases that were in there that were so, there's all these elements about Van Halen that have
The
so
personality,
many.
man.
Yeah, it's just the personality.
Was just shining on everything. It did even the if you go to Diver Down, the album that most people will bag on because there's so many covers, blah blah blah. There's some great stuff he does on there. It's just even what he does to covers, he changes it. He makes it him without you forget that it's actually from somebody else. You really got me. I wasn't even really familiar with the Kinks' original version. I got more familiar with Van Halen's version to the point where once I finally started listening to the Kinks' version, I go, "Ooh, I don't like this."
Right.
The same with Dancing in the Street. The same with You're No Good.
Yeah.
I don't like the original versions because I got so glued and so attached to the Van Halen versions.
Yeah, they always
Pretty
Van,
Woman is the thing.
yeah, Van Halenized everything, and when they did it was like you said, like You're No Good, such a cool version of that song. Like they said they didn't even really remember what it was. They just kind of pulled it together somewhat, and then did their thing, and then wow. So the rest of the band, like Michael, I mean, have you worked with Michael or played with Michael?
We've jammed. We've only jammed a couple times. First time I met him was in 2005, I believe. When I was in the band The Soul Circus, and we had a gig up at the it was a gig up in maybe Tahoe, I believe. And the Tahoe Cabo Wabo had just opened up, so we had a night off the night before. I went down. I don't remember that the whole band was there, but I remember I went down just to hang out, and Mikey was jamming with the band. So we that's the first time we actually hung and jammed together. So that was about 2005. So yeah, we're talking about 21 years ago. And we've just mainly been friends through the years. We keep talking about jamming and maybe future things together. But as long as he's working with Sam and Sam is busy and keeping him busy, Mike's got a good thing going on. So I'm patiently waiting for us to be able to do more in the future if the stars align. Be awesome.
Yeah, he's a nice guy. I've met him a few times, and it's just such a normal dude. I mean, just so cool.
Yeah, you never expect. They always say don't meet your heroes, and you always expect that. A band of that caliber, they're bothered by everybody. Everybody knows who they are. They can't move without being bothered. So a kind of wall, being an artist myself, nowhere near that caliber, but being an artist myself, I know where those walls come from in terms of I just want to get from point A to point B without taking an hour to do so when it should take 5 minutes. So I get how that wall eventually starts building around you, and I'm sure especially Ed or Dave, they have to build that wall, otherwise being too accessible, it could even be dangerous. There's a lot of dangerous people out there that pretend that they want to get close to you, and what happened to John Lennon. So
yeah,
I understand that, and Mikey has none of that. I don't understand how he doesn't have any of that. He seems like he's so approachable. He's always so nice to everyone, and I model myself after that as well. There's a lot of artists that were able to retain that, and I think it's really important.
Over the years, did you meet Ed, Alex, or any other folks in the band? To Sammy?
Let's go down the line of from no to yes.
Okay.
Never met Ed.
Okay.
Met Alex once, but it was backstage after their show. I believe it would have been 2004, if I'm not mistaken. No, actually, I'm sorry. It would have been when Dave was back in the band. Now I was thinking it was when Sam and Mike were back in there, but I know Wolfie was definitely playing. So
okay,
it was
7 or 8.
First time that Dave came back. I got backstage, but only backstage to the kind of main hang after. Back. It wasn't near the dressing rooms where you actually get to see them and all that. Al and I think Wolf were the only two that came out. And so I did meet Wolf there. So I've never met Wolf, never met Ed, met Alex there for just a quick hello, meaning he wouldn't know me from a hole in the wall if we met today.
Right.
And then obviously we go down to Dave I met once. He was at our show with Yngwie Malmsteen in 1985 because Talus was opening up for us, and Billy was already officially in Dave's Eat 'Em and Smile band.
Right.
And so he just came to the show to watch Billy and to be there. So I met Dave once in 1985, and that's the only time I've ever met and taken a photo with Dave. And then obviously the last of the Mohicans would be Sam, who I've met numerous times. Gary Cherone, I have a very close friendship with him.
Cool.
And of course Mikey.
Yeah.
So the only ones I actually have direct contact with are Sammy, Mike, and Gary. And I put Sammy in the same category as Mike. I mean, of course, Sammy's probably a little more recognized and probably a little bothered a little more based on his celebrity status in terms of everybody knows who he is.
Right.
But again, I've never seen that kind of standoffish. I don't want to say hello. I don't want to meet you right now. I've never seen that with Sam. Every time I've run into Sam at a restaurant randomly while he's picking up food for him and his wife. He's always so giving of his time and
Yeah.
his energy. Everything is always so positive and so cool. I met Sam in 2004 the first time at Neil Sean's 50th birthday.
Okay.
I went up to the Bay Area to go to Neil's party, and first time I met Sam, and again, he was just so cool. And of course, he was extra cool to me because maybe he didn't know my voice, didn't know who I was, but
Yeah.
because I was associated with Neil, it was an automatic, I accept you, I embrace you kind of thing. And I love that about Sam. He's always been that way. And of course, I have my other connection with him in terms of music, because the first song that I did of his was a rendition of a song that he and Neil wrote called Peephole.
Okay.
And that was originally a Planet Us song that they were working on together 2003, 2004. When that project went aside, that was one of the songs that we kept for the Soul Circus album. So I modeled the way I sang it, the way Sammy sang it. I wanted to make sure that I had the same passion, if not emotion. And I remember Sam sending a message to Neil to send to me. He goes, if you guys going to do that song, make sure you tell Jeff he needs to know what that song's about. It's deep. It's really it's emotional. It's angry because the song is about a little girl who was basically raised in a closet. She was raised like a wolf to basically sleep and live in a closet. The
Wow.
only thing she had to the outside world was a little peephole through the door handle. And so
Right.
that's why the song it's called Peephole, and it's really brutal. So it's a true story.
Wow.
He says you got to know what this little girl went through, and you need to put that in your voice, the anger and the frustration. And I was balls to the wall. I screamed the hell out of that song the same way he did on his version.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you fast forward to 2001, the movie Rockstar. He wrote Stand Up.
Right. Right.
I don't know if he wrote. I'm sure he did. There are alternate lyrics compared to the version that he eventually released, his original
Right.
version.
Right.
And the song's in a different key. It's got a more 80s metal vibe compared to Sammy's version, was just more Sammy's style.
Right. Right.
But it's, again, I had those two songs in my wheelhouse, in my vernacular that Sam was a part of. So it's kind of cool.
That is cool. I love that, that movie, and there's so many connections inside of it with all the different people that are, like Miles Kennedy was in his early stages when that
Right.
was, and all the people that were involved. Of course, Jason Bonham, of course,
Yeah.
was in that.
Even Ralph Saenz or
Right.
Michael Starr,
Right, Michael Starr. Yeah, right.
He's got his bit. But it just goes to show all of those people and more were brought in to sing for the movie. They were brought in to audition, if you will. It was such a huge thing for me to actually get it,
Right.
because obviously whatever my voice fit for the original singer, the Bobby Beards character, not so much the Mark Wahlberg character.
Right,
But
right.
I'm just so thrilled to have been a part of that whole situation. There's a multitude of singers that could have, even Miles, they had him singing all the songs potentially for him to sing for the original singer. And for me to get that, it's amazing. And then you see where Miles has taken his own career, and that's pretty awesome as well.
Right. It's an amazing trajectory. And you were in Journey for, like I said, we were talking about offline for a couple of years, right?
Oh, 11 months. That's it. Not even a full year.
Okay. Yeah. I was, when that happened, it was like 2006, you said, right?
I was in 2006 and until 2007. Yeah.
So how was that gig to do that every night? I mean, or do that every other night?
I'm not gonna. I mean, I no bones about it. I talk about it all the time. It was a stressful situation. Not only because the vocal side, the technical side of that's an animal within itself.
Right.
But any band that has a legendary singer, that has a singer that was one of the reasons why that band exploded and why they're one of the biggest in the world, not singing for the original lineup as they tour, the fans are not. They're really, really hard to accept it. When the guy's living down the street, down the next zip code, and he's easily able to do it, why are they getting this guy and then that guy's not there anymore, and they get yet another guy and then another guy when they can get the original? That's the band's business. That's his personal reasons and the band's business.
Sure.
But anybody stepping into those shoes is just going to get blasted. Doesn't sound as good. You have to go up there and almost sing it verbatim the way it sounds on the records, or you're going to get slammed. You're going to get blasted.
Sure.
Now, compare that to Queen. Compare that to AC/DC. When a singer's deceased, when he or she's no longer on the planet, and the band want to continue, you're forced to get somebody else if the band is going to continue. So it's a little, even though there's you still kind of have that push and pull with audiences. It makes it, the only way you're ever going to hear that band again is with a new singer. So that's a little easier transition to kind of navigate as you're replacing a legend.
I guess that you just made a good point too about Van Halen, is that when I think about AC/DC making that transition, that was because Bon Scott passed, but that didn't happen with Van Halen. That was just literally David and then Sammy, and somehow it worked.
And that's the other part of the replacement singer, or the new singer, or the new guy, however you want to spin it.
Yeah,
you naturally, if the band is still relevant. Thankfully, Van Halen they were still on top of the world as far as people wanted new albums. They wanted new music, new songs. When a band gets to 25, 30 years old, so do their fans. They're not interested in new stuff. They're interested in the stuff that made them click and made them tick when they were younger. And that's all they want to see and hear. The newer fans are basically there because their parents dragged them, or they're just interested in the old stuff. You're not really, from my personal experience, you're not really gaining new fans the way you were when you were all within the same age gap, or difference and age range rather. And so that helped Van Halen continue to move on. It helped Iron Maiden when Paul Di'Anno was let go and Bruce Dickinson came in. The bands were relevant. They were still at the beginning stages or the middle stages of their careers. You put a new Van Halen out now even with Sam, or even with a new singer, you're probably not going to get the same attention, the same focus as you did 1985. Right.
You had mentioned that you know Gary, right? So that was a difficult situation there when then he came in, and that was, like you said, it's kind of a weird, would the fans accept a third? Yeah. And that's been all the question, right? I don't know what all happened with all that, but it seemed like a bad time for Ed, and it didn't really creatively didn't spin right.
I mean, I love Gary to pieces. I love his voice. I love what he does with his voice. So for Van Halen, it might have been a strange pairing, because he was kind of, were you expecting him to be the Gary Cherone of Extreme? Were you expecting him to sound like a cross between Ed and Sam? Were you expecting him to sound like something completely new, and removing all those? It's so difficult to navigate the expectation of what fans are wanting out of a new singer, or hoping for a new singer, or even not wanting a new singer. So he really had it hard going for him. The good thing he had was his energy on stage and his consistency on stage singing this stuff. And the fact that they were throwing in more Roth songs as well as Sam songs when they were going out and doing that, which, Sammy didn't really do too much DLR, and Dave never did any Sammy songs.
Right.
When you go to see Van Halen, it'd be nice to see them sing and do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, well, and Sammy did, went out on that last tour, and they did do a little bit of Roth era stuff, which is nice, and actually turned out, I thought, really good. That tour, and with Satriani and Jason. Yeah,
I even like that they let Mikey sing an old school Van Halen song.
Yeah, it was
that's
great.
Fun.
That was great. Yeah, the whole thing. Cherone. I heard. Now I didn't see him live on that tour, but I did see some videos, and some friends of mine and bandmates went to see that tour and said he was great live.
Yeah. Oh, Gary, he's so consistent live, and he's so fun to watch live.
Yeah.
Dave was always the guy that every girl wants to be with and every guy wanted to be. And that was, Dave gave that persona. He taught the world how to be a showman. If you want to be in a rock band and be a presence on stage, you watch David Lee Roth to get all that in you. And I'm sure Gary soaked a lot of that stuff in, the same as he got from Freddie Mercury, the same as I got. You take all that stuff in because you want to be a performer. You want to be remembered not only for your singing prowess, but for your stage prowess and what you say to the audience, how you connect and generate with them.
Right.
And Gary was very good at that, just the same.
really what happened after Van Halen, this explosion of show happened on all aspects of it, the stage, their their presentation, and then you come in 80 what is it, 83 with
84.
84 with Malmsteen.
With Yngwie, yeah.
Yeah.
But my only regret then was I really wish the fashion and hair police would have arrested me back then, because I didn't know how to dress, and boy, that haircut just did not do me any favors.
Well, those albums were great, man, and I I had listened to those. I Am a Viking. Of course, I See the Light. I mean, as a guitar player, these are like
Sure,
things you listen to all the time, and yeah. So I always heard your voice from way back. It was really cool. So, Sons of Apollo, you guys covered Cradle of Rock, right?
Yeah,
I remember seeing a video of that.
Everybody in Sons of Apollo are and were and are massive Van Halen fans, and especially of all people, the keyboardist Derek Cherone.
Right.
And so on the first album, obviously we needed to extend the show. We only have one album to draw from,
right?
And we weren't doing everything from the record. I think there's one or two songs we didn't do, but we needed enough material to extend the show out. We have the solos, all those different things, and the only two keyboard, they didn't want to do any Hagar stuff. They had to be, if we're going to do a Van Halen cover, it's got to be the Roth era. But they were only two keyboard songs that they could imagine that we'd pull off. We're not going to play I'll Wait. That doesn't. We need something upbeat and more charged.
Right.
And Jump was obviously too obvious, and it was too commercially. It didn't fit the mold of what we're trying to sell Sons of Apollo as. So
right.
Cradle obviously has the electric Wurlitzer, distorted Wurlitzer that Ed played on the record.
Yeah.
And so it made for a great song that we could throw in on the encore. And I loved going out in the audience, singing in the audience, and having them sing with me. It turned into a nice little showpiece for us.
Yeah, there's that video's from Europe or somewhere. No, is it from like the Mediterranean or something?
It's from Bulgaria. The live DVD. Yeah. I went into the crowd. We played at the oldest Roman amphitheater known to history. It was built before Christ, apparently.
Wow.
And we shot our live DVD there in Plovdiv, Bulgaria, and I remember, because I always test before these shows, I would go out and make sure I know where my exit and entrance, getting back to the stage, where to go, how to get there, and all that. I make sure I set all that up.
Yeah.
So I had to do that for this show, and because it's so old, even the steps, they were so you have a normal step these days that goes that big. So even my size, 27 foot, you can go up a normal stair, but these steps are like this, and they warned me, be really careful, because you might have to use your tiptoes to go up and down the stairs, and they're really sharp ends. They didn't really fix or manicure it for modern times. They left it as is.
Wow.
So the edges of the stairs are really sharp. If you fall and your knees hit the edge of the step, you're going to slice your knee open. It's that bad.
Ooh.
So it was almost like walking on saws, really thin saws. And they said, be really careful, because it's easy to fall. And if you fall, you're not going to walk away unhurt.
Ooh, gosh, that's an amazing place, though. I mean, that's
you equate the adrenaline. You want to look cool. You want to keep the show flowing,
right?
And not fall. So you got to keep that in mind while you're doing it. And yeah, I survived.
Did Neil Sean ever say anything to you about Ed, or when he was with him in '78 on that first tour? Did he ever relate anything to you about it?
I know we spoke on the tour bus when I was with Journey, or maybe even Soulstrikes. I know we spoke in detail about Ed, but a lot of those stories kind of escape me now.
Yeah,
it was always really positive. I mean, he loved Ed, he respected Ed, and vice versa. They were friends. They loved each other.
Right.
The same as Steve Lukather. They're really close. Steve, I think, saw Ed a lot more. They lived close enough to each other. They would play poker together. They were always hanging out back in the day. But Neil always had nothing but great things to say about Eddie. So I wish I'd met Ed so I can hear how he felt about others, because I'm sure the feelings were mutual.
Well, let me ask you this: you were talking about the kind of the insulation of being as well known as yourself and others are. And there's a lot of stories about how Ed was so insulated up there in Studio City in his place, and how that didn't, I don't know if it didn't sit. I mean, there's stories about him trying to go anywhere, even at 2:00 in the morning, and could not have a line for him.
Right.
And so, I mean, some of his issues, I don't know how much were related to just being, he seemed like whenever he was presented with somebody, one-on-one, especially if they didn't know he was in Van Halen, that seemed to be the ones he loved the most or would interact with the most. People who didn't know who he was. He liked
exactly like the photo that was taking it was a Tool show with Wolf.
Yeah.
The person taking the photo, they had no idea it was Eddie Van Halen. It's kind of cool.
He just loved it. It seemed like.
But imagine having to escape that every single time. I mean, you walk into a place and you can feel people staring at you. I'm sure it was, and Ed, as you've read in any books or any just knowing his history or people talking about him, he was a very private person. He was a bit shy in terms of he wasn't the over the top rock star. He didn't live that lifestyle off the stage. Mm-hmm. On the stage, he looked just like as wild as Roth would have looked, just because he's constantly moving and smiling and part of the show. But he secluded himself because the music was the most important part, not the rock star side. Right.
Yeah, that is another reason why I was secluded. Yeah, because he was always working.
Yeah,
he just loved.
He was always looking into the future, and it's why he built the amps, why he had his signature guitars. You take away all the things that he did outside of the records and the songs.
Oh yeah,
I did so much more outside in terms of music within the instruments and the sounds and all the things that you normally associate or affiliate with NAMM.
Yeah, when we were at NAMM last week or 2 weeks ago when I saw you, I always say this about NAMM. Like when I was there in the '80s, I was back there. Probably '87 was my first time, and Ed would perform and stuff like that. There were, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't go anywhere. It was real hard, but it was a really exciting thing that he might be there, all the time that we were there. But then, like how he impacted the industry, it's like these days you go through, walking through, and you'll see things, and you'll go, "That's connected to Ed in some way."
Right.
It's like wild.
I think you just actually sparked a memory. I think the first time I actually met Mikey was at NAMM.
Okay.
In 1990 or 91. It was one of the two, because I was in a band called Eyes, and we just signed with St. Louis Music, which was a music corp that had Ampeg. Yep. They had Crate and another company. And so I remember Ken Hensley from Uriah Heep was one of the reps that worked for St. Louis Music. Mm-hmm. And there were a couple others. And so we were endorsed with Crate. And even they gave me amplifiers. I'm the singer, but I said, I play a little guitar. Yeah, well, throw some stuff in for you. I still even have my little practice amp here in the studio.
Cool.
And so we went to the St. Louis Music thing to take photos and all that. And Mikey was there at the same time doing some Ampeg stuff. So that was the first time I actually met Mikey. He was very gracious and nice even then. Totally forgot about that. You talking about your first time at NAMM. I was like, hang on a second. I have a first time at NAMM.
How long ago was that? What year was that?
That was 90 or 91, because the album came out in 90, but it would have had to come out after January. So I'm assuming the album came out and then we got the endorsement. So I think it would have been 91 at NAMM.
You've had the unique history of playing with some of the greatest guitar players on planet Earth. I mean,
I was just talking about that the other day. That's amazing you bring that up. I forget that, man. I forget when you put Yngwie, when you put Bumblefoot, when you I've jammed and done a few things with Brian May, Neil Sean. It blows my mind the ridiculousness of my career that I got to play with such legends and such masters of what they do.
That's cool. Brian May, what'd you work on with him?
Well, we just worked on. We've done a couple appearances, live appearances together.
Okay.
The last time I got to sing with and for him, he's an astronomer. He's got a bachelor's. He's got a degree in astronomy.
Right.
And so he's part of an event every year called Starmus.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a convention for astronomers from around the world. They convene every year.
Right.
And they got the name because it's about mixing the word, star, the stars, astronomy, and music. So it's the marriage and the putting the two Starmus together. He's performing as well as speaking and appearing at these conventions every year.
Right.
So Sons of Apollo played the one in Armenia back in 22, I believe it was. And Brian said, "Hey, we want to do Show Must Go On with several singers," and then he wanted to do Smoke on the Water with me singing. So we've done a few things here and there. I've done some appearances with him in England when I was singing with his musical director, Spike Edney, his keyboard player, musical
Right.
director.
Right.
He has his own band called the SAS Band, and he would frequently invite Roger or Brian and or both. I jam with them in LA when they got the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. So I've had my little run-ins and hangs with Brian. I'm still waiting for the day where we can do something in the studio together. Hopefully that'll happen.
Dude, that Brian May is one of those ones I've never met, but he was one of the first guitar players that I probably ever heard that really caught my ear. I was just a kid when "We Will Rock You, We Are the Champions" came out, and that solo at the end of that "We Will Rock You," and how that struck me. It's kind of like when Ed struck me. It was the same way. It was just something just special there. And I think you went back far enough to remember Don Kirshner's rock concert, right?
Absolutely. Midnight Special and rock concert, yeah.
Right. So I had watched an 82 replay of the Unchained video on Don Kirshner's, and that's how I kind of came across Edward and David when he was being interviewed by Jim Ladd in his backyard.
Oh, yeah.
And so when I saw it, though, there was just something about the way that Edward transmitted his thing. It's just like you were talking about with singers and how you communicate non-verbally and more through your facial and your body. And
sure.
So when you see great performers, like last week when I saw you at the NAMM Jam, you had Dino up there. I think it was Dino with you, right? Y'all did Stone in Love, right?
Oh, no, that was the Pauly Z for Stone in Love. I sang with Dino and a cast of everybody at the finale.
Yeah, and it's so cool. Like Dino has a kind of an old school vibe, even though he's a young guy. Mm-hmm. And the stage presence thing, it's such a thing. But I'm trying to think back when Van Halen came before that. That's like I said with Foreigner. I don't remember, Lou Gramm having that kind of. He was an awesome singer, but I don't remember that kind of outward eat 'em and smile era.
Well, I remember a lot of people correlated Dave's onstage presence or what he did on stage as kind of as a distraction to the fact that he wasn't a great singer. People used to say that all the time.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to hear him belt and sing so great, so you're kind of going to watch him entertain.
Right.
And whether or not that was true, clearly everybody knows that the deep divers that know about Dave, they know the big influence on the Jim Dandy thing.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so clearly you were going to see a show. If you weren't going to see, or I'm sorry, if you're not going to hear perfect performances, you were going to walk away so entertained because the show was that amazing.
Yeah, I think that was what in Jim Ladd's interview was. It's like, who is this guy? And what is his deal? It was just I hadn't heard him sing. I just saw him talking, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah. He had such personality. He could do an interview like nobody back in the day. I think it's the biggest tragedy how the loss of Eddie was downplayed. He to me, and it's only my own opinion. I don't want to be misquoted on Blabbermouth saying Eddie Van Halen is bigger or more popular than Ozzy Osbourne. But in terms of notoriety, I would say as many people know who Eddie Van Halen is as well as they knew who Ozzy was.
Sure.
Whether you're a fan of either or both, the level of what they did for Ozzy that they should have done for Ed, if not even once, but twice, and maybe even three times, maybe even a short tour, something to commemorate not only the music and the legacy, but the man himself. That there's so many people around the world influenced by Eddie. There's so many musicians, there's so many songs, there's so many elements of what that man left behind. He should have been celebrated in the same way, and that's the biggest tragedy. The Grammys, they showed a nod, the in memoriam, they showed his guitar with a spotlight on it. They should have done something bigger and grander for somebody like Ed. They should have had, like they had for Ozzy the other day, they had Post Malone and a group singing a song for him to tribute the loss of Ozzy Osbourne. They should have done the same for Ed.
Yeah, what do you think that is? Why do you think that got?
I wish I knew. Again, there has to be reasons, or there have to be many reasons. Huh. The bottom line is it should have been done regardless of whatever circumstances. They should have celebrated this man's legacy. And sure. I still think even if they do it 10 years into his, losing it, it's got to be done. It's got to happen at some point.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know if the former members need to be involved in it. I think yes, like Queen did for Freddie Mercury, it was a massive event. But if the band doesn't want to be involved in it, there are so many other musicians and so many that love Ed, that love Van Halen, love all aspects of the band, that would love to be a part of something like that. I would do it in a heartbeat.
Oh, I know. There's so many people
as
that
would so many.
Yeah, right. I mean, I just, so many of the people that have been on here, all of them, all of the artists I know are just, they're all feel like we do about
Absolutely.
it. It's like, what
we
the
all
heck?
feel that. We all feel the same way. Like, how could this not happen? How could this be overlooked? We lost Ed, 6 years ago, and this is ridiculous that nothing's happened like that since this time. There was rumors and murmurs here and there, but the fact that it hasn't happened is just shocking to me.
Yeah, I know. There's a book coming out that Alex is putting out with like photographs and stuff, kind of like Jimmy Page's anthology book that has all his stuff, like memorabilia and that kind of thing, which will be cool. And his book came out. I don't know if you read Alex's book.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was a good book, and it had some really cool stories in it about his father, which I thought were kind of cool.
Right.
Insights, into their musical development.
I thought the book was amazing. It was a love letter to his brother.
Yeah, it was a good book.
He left out certain things. He omitted. Sammy wasn't part of it. Wouldn't mention his name. Didn't really talk about Gary. It was basically, this is an ode to my brother, and the other ones that I mention are only mentioned because they're part of what I wanted to tell in the stories and the context.
And maybe it's not the only book he'll do. I mean, obviously he's doing this anthology, and I don't know how that's going to be presented, but it'll be a cool look and read, and I'm going to get it, of course, and check that out. That's going to be amazing to see. But Wolfgang is a very sensitive guy. I've met Wolfie, super, super nice, though, and what a great grasp on his father's history.
Right.
Like a lot, like really knows the detail.
Yeah, and besides the lineage, of course, the bloodline of coming from the Van Halen name.
Mm-hmm.
I really, really give so much credit to Ed and Val for the way this kid was brought up. He's got a very strong demeanor in terms of he really has an anchor in himself, on himself, and he knows how to hold himself in interviews. He's very sincere. He's very soft-spoken. He's not wild, and I love the kid's demeanor. His character it's such an homage to his upbringing, I say.
Yeah,
and then, of course, then he's got the smarmy, sarcastic side, which you need. You need that as a defense mechanism because you're going to get it from all areas. And again, he knows exactly how to handle himself. Sometimes he engages, but he knows how to kind of put out the fires and then move on with life without getting too involved and people attacking him. He's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and he really navigated it so well. And now all that's kind of past him. Now he can just kind of do his own thing without having to worry about constantly having to talk about his dad or talk about the things he did with his dad and the band to help his own career and moving his own name forward.
I would say that I love that too, and I think that part of his reason for not engaging with his father's legacy, obviously he was still grieving, and that's a big part of it. But the other part is he's trying to establish himself on his own, his career, and he's trying to be himself.
He needs to plant his own seed. He needs to grow his own tree because forever, even until he's in his 70s, he's going to be compared to his father. They're going to expect him to be what his father was, and I give him all the credit in the world for not chasing that demon, chasing that dragon for the sake of, the easy way out. He's not a nepo baby at all. And that's what I love about this kid.
There was that Drumeo video. I don't know if you saw that, but Drumeo did a video where he played drums and he watched this uncle, right? Yeah. And I thought that was so cool because it was like, these are the kind of things that I know he doesn't want to go down too far down those lanes and get stuck in it, because this is not about, being stuck in the legacies, but it was cool to see him reflect and play a little bit. And, the
best is that he got the same drive and ambition for music that his father had.
Oh, yeah.
Without having to copy him or just steal from him and do what his dad already did. He got the same level of love for music, the same soul and the same fire for music that his father had without it having to be what his father did.
Right. And it is a unique thing that he's doing. That's, when his father was first, talking about it, he was on cloud nine about it, before we ever heard anything. And he was right. He was all totally right. And he did.
And it's okay. His music doesn't sound like Van Halen, and it shouldn't.
Right.
It shouldn't.
Right.
That's like saying Eddie's music that he wrote should have sounded like Jan's, should have sounded like his father's. It
Right.
didn't.
Right.
Of course, you take all that influence and inspiration from your love for music, but you don't necessarily have to copy and paste, what was already done.
Yeah. Yeah. So were from where are you from originally, Jeff?
Born in Brooklyn, New York, raised in L.A.
Okay. And so you moved with your family, is what I read, right?
I'm Puerto Rican of Puerto Rican descent, but
Right.
even my parents, yeah, they were raised in New York and never lived in Puerto Rico. Never really. I visited a few times, but I don't really have the experience of what it is to grow up in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, the your musical background, when you came up, you said you were listening to more pop. What was the kind of the first thing that got you into music?
The Jackson Five,
Oh
100%.
wow.
Well, because
Awesome.
Michael was probably, I think he was 8 years older than me. No, he was younger. I'm sorry. I think when they started out, or when the first drop was, he was 12 or 13. I'm not sure the
Okay.
exact age. So I would have been 6 first time Jackson 5 came out. But to me, Michael being a kid and me being a kid, that's what I aspired towards first. I
Right.
wasn't aspiring towards adult singers and artists yet. I saw a kid doing this and knocking it out of the park, and I wanted to be like Mike.
Wow.
The first, I want to be like Mike.
That's cool
And so
though.
I was dancing and singing, and that whole world of Motown and the Jackson Five, even the Osmonds, that was my world until I got into the adult artists who, again, were the Bee Gees, the Little River Band, Earth, Wind and Fire, all the Sam Cooke, Jackie Wilson. I loved only R&B and soul music and pop music. The hard rock side did not kick in until probably I was, I'm gonna say 13.
Okay. Yeah, me too. As well, 13. Yeah, something about that age group and that timing for
Well,
us.
like I said, they finally found a way to kind of merge the two worlds together, marry the rock and the R&B world together. And Toto was my first drop. Well, actually, Queen was, because they were also
Yeah.
doing kind of, they weren't a kind of a one lane
Right.
kind of band.
Right.
And I've
Right.
always loved those kind of bands that you can go to extremes. You can have a Stone Cold Crazy, and then you can have something like Seaside Rendezvous. I'm going
Right.
Queen,
Right. Right.
and Van Halen eventually became that for me.
Yeah,
When
you was
everybody hated dancing in the street, I loved it.
well, I did too. And you're talking about Diver Down
Yeah,
and Big Bad Bill. I love Big Bad Bill.
same.
Greg and I were both talking about that in his interview. How much we both loved those campy kind of things they would do on those
Absolutely.
records. That showed
Good to Be Magic was great.
yeah,
When you go to
the depth and
Women
width of,
Children's
of their
Arts.
talent and the skill at singing just the barbershop quartet kind of vibes.
Right, right, right.
It's
Happy Trails.
like where did this come? That was such a cool part of even with you said Jan's kind of influence that they had this mix of so many different things. Like Roth brought his kind of show tunes kind of vibe
Yeah.
into the metal thing, and it turned into this thing, this Van Halen thing.
You know where all of that came from? Reading the books, reading Greg's, Van Halen Rising. So many, just the literature, it speaks for itself. When that band was together, rock was pretty much not in. It wasn't really in the scene. It wasn't in the focal point of popular music.
Sure.
So when they were playing clubs, they had to play everything from James Brown to everything that was from Cream. They mixed it all up. So you get all those influences that you actually liked growing up, but you're actually playing that stuff as a rock band. You're going to find ways to manipulate that into what you're doing musically, and that's what Van Halen had that a lot of bands didn't.
Yeah, yeah. I always took from that, like whenever we're playing live with our bands, it's like sometimes the three piece kind of thing doesn't really work for certain songs, and you kind of have to
Right.
figure out a way to make that work for a certain lineup or size band or whatever.
Right.
So when Van Halen was doing that, that was kind of what they had to do. They like trying to how we embody these horn parts
Right, right,
or, I
right.
mean, how are we going to get around these things in these songs? And they would add all the fills and everything that Ed would do. It's so amazing that how they did that. But they also kind of like opened up our minds to like these things that how you could make a 3-piece or 4-piece band with a singer do bigger, more complex things. Well, Queen did that too. Where how they did that was just
I
insane.
think one of the things that blows my mind to this day is how the hell did you write a melody over that the the pre-chorus part of Unchained. Because if you take away the vocals, don't you never miss me till I got a fast city address. It sounds pretty normal. But you hear what they're playing. Bum ba da 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 gum da 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 gum da 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 da. It's so it sounds prog. It sounds like, how am I going to write over that? But because he kept it simple, you forget that the complex thing is going on underneath.
Right.
All you got to do is now, how the hell am I going to sing and play that live?
That's crazy. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on here and giving your ode to Van Halen. You know, you are one of the great guys that have been out there forever, like my friend Phil X and Doug Aldrich and all these people who are just the solid guys we see all the time working.
We're disciples of Van Halen. That's all we can say.
I know.
That's the only way we can equate it. Phil X to me is the same as Nuno. Phil and Nuno to me are I'm not going to compare them to Ed, but I will compare their level of fire to Ed. The energy, the frenetic energy that they put into their instruments and put into it's in their soul. You can't learn that. You can't teach that. You can't trade it and give it away to somebody. You have to have that naturally in you. Nuno and Phil X have that fire in them the same way Ed had his own fire that made him the trailblazer that he became. That's what I love about those two players currently. And obviously, in my personal, honest, humble opinion, Nuno is clearly the GOAT. He's kind of like the baton has been passed on to him. I've seen that should have happened a long time ago. I've seen him being kind of like the next one that's going to take that lead and kind of lead, take the charge there. Unfortunately, it had to happen after, we lost Eddie, and it kind of like where Tony Bennett was kind of the last one standing in terms of that old school mentality of the Rat Pack. Once Frank passed and Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin, that whole Rat Pack were gone, Tony Bennett was basically the last one carrying that torch. And then he became the king of that domain. And that's how I see Nuno kind of taking charge of that right now.
You see any young guys? You see any young guys that are?
Oh, many, yeah, absolutely. But I've always loved Nuno's playing. I loved his approach to his playing.
Right.
And I see him with the same intensity, even if even if you hear a solo that's completely worked out from soup to nuts. It's all you can hear. It's like pieced together, as opposed to just putting a bunch of solos and then comping it together to make a final solo. You hear and see that same integrity of what Nuno puts in his playing that I personally saw to Eddie. And that's, again, my honest opinion. It doesn't have to agree with others. Others say, oh, you out of your mind, Eddie blows him. I don't care about that. This is my opinion.
Right. But like you said, it's about the fire. It's about the
yeah, exactly.
The vibe.
I'm not comparing styles. I'm not comparing levels of playing. I'm comparing the soulful side of the fire that those guys put into what they do.
Oh yeah, I saw Nuno probably 6 months ago here in town, in a fairly like 1,200, 1,500 seater, and I was right up front, and it was amazing. I mean, the guys Gary too. I mean, they were all awesome,
band,
right?
Yeah, I love that band. The whole band is just fantastic. They're buddies, but I'm a fan before they were my friends, and so now I'm both. Yeah. Have you ever heard the Michael McDonald version of I'll Wait?
I have never heard just his vocal alone.
Have you never heard his vocals singing on that song after they put it together?
No, I haven't heard it by himself. Is it by himself?
I don't think it's by himself. I think it would have been in a company track, obviously, to demo the song.
Okay.
And whatever Dave had to actually sing it in the studio, he needed whatever guide there was for the melodies. Somebody didn't just say, da, 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 da. Okay, there's your melody. I'm sure he listened to it, and then he did his own version of what Michael did. But I'm curious if anybody's ever heard that version.
I haven't heard that. Have you heard it?
I have not.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check.
I would assume Renoff would have found a way to dig that up somehow, and you guys would have heard it.
I will ask him.
Okay.
Because
the last thing, I don't know if you've ever heard, there was a Van Halen tribute album that Bob Kulick did back in the early 2000s.
I remember this.
I forgot the name of it, Hot for Van Halen, or it was whatever the name was. I did the song So This Is Love on it. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, I just want to tell my little story because it totally fits here. I got the call from Bob Kulick. He said, hey man, doing this Van Halen tribute album. And before I could even finish his sentence, I go, I'm in. Because there's certain tributes I would pay to be a part of. He did a Queen tribute. That was the first time we worked together. When he said Van Halen, I said, whatever song it is, I'm in. So he said, okay, cool. We already have it. It's recorded and everything, but it's the only one we have left. Do you mind coming down this day to sing it? It was So This Is Love. He said, we got Eric Singer on drums, Blue Saraceno on guitar, and Tony Franklin on bass. Fantastic version. Because Tony, you have that fretless thing, and it just adds a different element to the song that from the original.
Yeah.
Eric is solid as a rock on the drums, and blues. He played it respectfully to Eddie, but he also added his own flavor to it. It just came out so great. The day of the session, I forgot the only way for me to get because when I sing Van Halen, I don't sing it as JSS. I sing it like Dave.
Right.
I kind of impersonate the way he sings. I use his kind of vowel sounds and especially but the hardest thing to do is the wow, that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
The only way I can get that is when my voice is completely trashed. And it's funny because I could be doing like 4 or 5 shows in a row on tour, and by the time I get to my day off, I'm just toast. My voice has nothing, but all day I go, wow, it comes out without even trying.
Right.
So the studio's maybe 25 minutes away from where I lived, and I remember getting in the car going, oh my God, my voice is too clean. I'm not going to be able to get those yipes, the big screams, because again, I can sing David if my voice is completely trashed or if it's all there, but I can't get those yipes. Mm-hmm. So in the car, I'm screaming like a banshee. I'm driving with the windows closed because I would have gotten pulled over for being a madman. I'm just, I'm trying to blow out my voice.
Right.
So in 25 minutes, I finally pulled in, said hello to Bob, and say, okay, man, what are we doing? He goes, whoa, your voice, are you okay? I go, no, this is unintentional. Because, man, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be able to get anything out of you. You sound hoarse. I go, trust me on this. So we started recording it. And when we got to those yipes, they flowed. It sounds so killer. One of my prouder moments in singing David Lee Roth's version of Van Halen. So if you get a chance, you can find it online. So This Is Love, Jeff Scott Soto. You'll find at least one. And it was so fun to do because I'm a little rough around the edges. Instead of when my baby's on the corner, I was adding a little more gruff to it. But I really captured the essence of DLR, especially when it came to those yipes. So that's my story.
I was just saying, is that the same record that Ralph's on, singing Unchained?
Yeah,
or
Ralph,
something?
I think, is on there. Stephen Piercy, I think, is on there. Yeah, it's an all-star tribute to Van Halen.
I remember that record. I probably have it here somewhere in my collection of stuff. Yeah, I remember hearing those songs and all that.
Yeah.
So what else are you up to right now? You did your TSO thing through the holidays, but what's your plans this year?
At the moment, it's a slower year because I had to address a few health things, and
Okay.
I have to tell you what those are because when you say that with everybody else, Dee Snider just pulled out of an entire tour because of health.
All right.
I don't want to just drop that little thing and everybody thinks I've got some kind of fighting cancer or whatever. I got to get a knee replacement.
Yeah.
On my side, that's one of the easiest and downplayed things to do or get done compared to having to fight a disease or go through chemo and all that stuff.
Sure,
so
right.
I'll just drop that. I got to get I'm getting my right knee done in 2 weeks.
Okay.
And then I need to get the left one done, but I got to wait 3 months in between. So I didn't really book too much. I got the Monsters of Rock cruise where I'm doing way more than I was supposed to do. I'm doing 8 shows in 8 days, and I didn't even do that in my prime when I was able to sing that many. So I don't know how that's going to work for me because I got to do 2 shows with Soto. I got to do 2 shows with Soto Beeler on the boat, and I got to do 2 shows with Ellison Soto. And when we get off the boat, we have 2 shows in a row afterwards with Saigon Kick as me as the singer. So I got 8 shows in 8 days. I'm like, oh God, I'm stressing and anxious about it. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but chin up, just do it. Go for it.
Well, I was going to say your TSO stuff. How is that every day when you're out there doing that?
Not only every day, but most of the time we're doing 2 shows a day.
Right.
The setup and the glory of TSO and the way they designed the bands. There are 10 singers there. Each singer gets 1 or 2 maximum lead songs. Because when you're doing 2 shows a day, the most I'm doing would be 4 lead vocals within the course of a day, compared to doing 18 or 22 songs with the band every night when you're on tour.
Right.
But you also don't do 5 in a row with double shows. So it's still easier on the voice. Of course, I'm singing backgrounds with TSO, and then with all the talking and everything, you kind of a little rough around the edges after 5 days in a row. naturally, but also it's designed not to burn you out, that you don't have to take days off, you don't have somebody filling in for you. So that's the TSO design. It was brilliant. You just have 10 singers, everybody backs each other. If somebody gets sick or doesn't feel well, you can cover for somebody. It's really well designed, and how they put that all together.
Very unlike the very unlike the Journey situation, right? So how many were you day on, day off with that, or what was it? What was the standard of that year? 26.
It was usually no more than 2 on, 1 off. Very rarely I did 3 in a row and then a day off, or 2 days off after that.
I always wonder about Arnell and everybody else that's been in the camp. Everybody is, it seems like it's just a death nail to be in that band for
Absolutely.
a period. Periods.
And I say it all the time. I probably wouldn't have lasted 3 or 4 years. Had they not let me go, I probably either would have stepped down, or they would have let me go, because they could hear that it's taken its toll on my voice. It took its toll on the creator's voice. You hear Perry himself was having problems with singing that catalog in the 90s.
Right.
So imagine getting into your 50s and 60s. It's difficult to sing that range.
Yeah, even a half step down. I mean, everybody was you were a half step down then, right?
Nope. We tried one show, half step down, and it was more difficult to sing that, because the pinch of my voice, especially then, it was just something Jonathan Cain said, let's just try it. If it's easier in Jeff's voice, it's only half step, but people aren't going to really notice it. Right. And so the one night we did it, I was struggling, actually, compared to some of the nights when we did it in standard key. I said, please never go down a half step. Let's stay, as long as I'm here, let's stay in the standard key, because you find a certain way of getting those notes, and you get comfortable on how to get those notes. And then all of a sudden it changes keys. Like, wait, that technique doesn't work there, because now I got to use my real voice to get those. But now I'm struggling with my voice, real voice. It's called the head voice, or the mixed voice, to be able to get those higher notes.
Right.
And I had a technique that worked for me at the time, and I said, as long as I'm here, please, let's keep it the constant tuning.
So the Soul Circus thing, when this thing was bouncing around, I was hearing about it. Did you guys ever actually put a record out?
Yeah, we put a record out. There's 2 versions of the record, actually.
Okay.
Dean Casanova was in the original version.
Okay.
We recorded that version of when Dean was with us. And when Dean exited, we got Virgil. We hadn't toured yet. Right. And so Neil and I had a lot of discussions on, well, now it'd be strange for Virgil to be in a video. We got to shoot a couple videos to be playing over Dean's parts, because they're completely different kind of drummers. But we were also not really happy with the mixes on the first version of the album. So we just decided, if we're going to go remix it, and since we already released the one with Dean's drumming on it, why don't we add a couple new songs to differentiate from the 2 different versions, and it'll give us the opportunity to remix it, readdress what we hated about the first mixes, but also to now have Virgil re-record all the drums. So that way his version of that album are the ones that he's playing on. Okay. And so that's why there are 2 versions of that. It's called World Play, was a debut album. Okay. It came out in 2005.
Yeah.
And we did 3 weeks of touring in the US, 3 weeks of touring in Europe, and the band was pretty much finished, because Neil had a crazy schedule that year with Journey to jump back into.
Yeah, man. You're like I said, you and Phil, and you just mentioned Ron Thal, Bumblefoot. I'm sure you've seen him do the Asia thing where he played the only time with
singing and playing. Yeah,
dude, that's sick.
It's awesome. Ron is he's an anomaly. I think he came from another planet. They just kind of dropped him off and left him here, and it's like, well, what am I going to do here? I'll play guitar, because he truly is. I've never seen, and probably never will see, a talent like Bumblefoot, and I don't even think he doesn't fall in the same category as Ed or Nuno. He's more in the Steve vibe, just like, you're a lunatic alien the way you play. Right. And it's just it stands in it's a league of its own.
It is a weird thing, like with Vi. When Vi was coming up, I didn't at first have a taste for him tonally,
right?
But then he put out Passion and Warfare, and I was all like, oh my God, these compositions are amazing, and that's why I became a fan of his. And
my first drop of him that I was an instant fan was the album Disturbing the Peace that replaced Yngwie and Alcatraz.
Yeah, right.
I just thought, okay, completely like worlds apart, different kind of guitar playing, but what he did on that record was just mind-blowing to me.
Amazing.
And then you even heard touches of that. You heard of a few things that he did there into what he did in Eat 'Em and Smile and Skyscraper.
Right, right. And did you ever work with him, with Steve?
With Vine, no.
No?
We've spoken about it many a time through the years, and then he got to the point where he was just doing guitar music, and so it just never happened. But he like Nuno or two, and Brian May are three that I would love to just do a little, just one thing with.
Right, right, man. You have had a really great career, though. I mean, it's amazing, just to make a living at this at all, and to have the interactions and chances to do the different things you've done. I mean,
I
all
agree.
over the world. I mean, that's you've been able to go, I'm sure, to Japan a few times, like everybody it has, and those experiences have got to be,
Absolutely, it's what makes you become what you are. I mean, and it is part of the process or the creative process to gain different influences that you put into music as you go forward in life. You can't just keep recreating the same thing that you were influenced by looking out your own backyard. You take other experiences, you take other people's experiences, and all of a sudden you're adding to your whole vernacular. And to me, that's more important than the earlier stages, or as important, I'm sorry, as the earlier stages of one's career. Because
yeah,
you got to, obviously, where you formed from, what actually made you get to see it in the early portion. But as you become what you become, you get to see now the experimental versions of where you got to experience life.
yeah. I love that what you said when I came up to you at NAMM, and I said I was telling you, talking about the podcast, and you said you had me at Van Halen. I was like,
Certain
okay.
artists, certain groups, or yeah, it's a given. It's you. Yeah, I'm locked in. You talk about Prince, Queen, Van Halen. You've got my ears perked.
So there's so many great people in our community out there, musicians and singers and performers. And when I go to NAMM, I think that's what I get the most is I feel like that connection between all these people around the world that
Yeah,
do this, and we all get up every day, and this is what we do, and it's
yeah.
amazing. I appreciate you coming on, man. I really,
No,
I've
Joe, no
always loved
problem.
what you do, and I wish you all the best, and continue and get your knees fixed and get back
Thank
to.
you.
One day they'll do this tribute, I hope, and it will be a massive thing, and I hope that.
Trust me, if I had a name like Ozzy or Steven Tyler, I would have put my own together by now. But
Right.
nobody's going to listen to me. I don't want to do something so important at a local club of 300-400 people. It deserves the attention of 40,000, 50,000 in a stadium. That to me, it's got to be the level that you send that off with.
That's exactly what Brian Tishy said. He
Yeah,
was just like, we can't go there. We have to go bigger than that,
yeah,
And you like I said, you played with the greatest guitar players on the planet. I mean, you know what that's like.
yeah.
what, and you appreciate it. So I appreciate you coming on and talking and
My
and
pleasure.
and taking the time with me today. And I hope you keep doing what you're doing. Keep out there rocking. I'll see you at NAMM next year. I'll say hey when I see you next.
Torch burning, man. That's what we do.
All right, buddy. I'll tell Greg you said hey.
We'll do.
And
Please do that.
okay, and I'll find out about that tape.
All right, Joe. Take care, brother.
Thank you, buddy. Have a good one. All right.
All right.
See you, Jeff.